Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, Wendy Nystrom. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Wilson Hago. He is the president and CEO of Hago Enterprises, and also his colleague, Bernard Barrier. Bernard is their business development, but also has a huge background in energy. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I love it. You're both trying to be polite and be like, oh, no, you go first. You go first.
Wendy, incidentally, it's just Hago Energetics and not Hago Energetics.
Energetics. Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah.
But what you guys are doing is it's a complicated technology, but you have actually made it very, very simple. And before we dive into what Hago does, Wilson, would you mind telling us a bit about your background and what got you into starting Hago?
Yeah, I mean, my background, I've been a industrial scientist pretty much all my life. I've got a degree in physics and physical chemistry, a PhD, and I've been worked on batteries and been in renewable energy for a few decades. So I got started on this a few years ago when the solicitation for the energy, the carbon X price came out, and we submitted a solution to that, and it was accepted, and we were one of the semifinalists. So this kind of started this whole train where we are today.
That's amazing. And Bernard, you have actually, I read up on your background. You have a pretty interesting background, other than the fact you had my heart when you were a geologist and you love geology, but you're also pretty active in the energy industry as well.
Well, yes. Long story short, I started out playing guitar and acting in Los Angeles and skiing on Mount Baldy and surfing in the ocean and all I wanted to do was have a really nice party. And I thought the grown-ups were taking care of everything. So around age 26, I entered into my career doing finance, commercial, residential, all kinds of finance, land, construction. And very soon I got involved in energy, working with ethanol. I was honored to work with a gentleman, Warner O. Harris, P.E. He was like the greatest Bechtel engineer that ever lived. He did these huge projects all around the world. And a gentleman who's working with us now, my first entrant into hydrogen was Glenn Ramback. And if you search Glenn Ramback, he's on our website. He's one of our executive advisors along with Rex Hodge. They are luminaries. They know more about hydrogen, the history of hydrogen than anyone. And anyway, so I worked on a hydrogen fuel cell integration startup with the head of NASA's fuel cell program, Paul Prokopius. He wrote probably 50% of all of the due diligence papers for hydrogen fuel cells. And Warner Harris developed half of the fuel cell stands that they developed fuel cells with. So he was the best integrator. So I have a background. So, and cutting to the quick, when Thor Bailey, he pulled me out back into the biomass world. And when he introduced me to Wilson, I recognized immediately the importance of Wilson's technology. I'm working with another technology, and we have two major projects to convert walnut shells with the largest nut producer on the planet, two companies. And Wilson's technology is this core enabling technology. So, and I'll let him tell you about it, but I want you to know
we'll get to the Hago in a second. I just want your background. You have a very diverse background, but it's pretty cool.
Well, I wander around a lot looking for the truth, and quite frankly, and I shouldn't suds up Wilson too much, but his technology, don't want to blow any smoke up his skirt, but Wilson's technology is very simple, just to separate hydrogen from methane and sequester or then attract the carbon and methane, CH4, into the biochar and then bury it for 1,000 years and turn it into agricultural amendments. It's very elegant, simple, and so many more technologies and processes will be born out of this core patented technology that Wilson has developed.
Wendy, let me just say, I mean, Barney, I like other people to talk for our work, right? So thanks, Barney, for those kind words. There's a lot of hype in the hydrogen field, and it's happening, for the past few years, and people have a a rightful reason to be skeptical about the hydrogen field. And from my point of view, I mean, being a scientist, I think the problem of climate change is severe enough so that there is no need to hype. Just state kind of the facts. We're in deep trouble. Let's try to find solutions that are viable. Let's see if we can get ourselves out of this hole. So the description or our approach, I mean, there are always advantages and disadvantages to anything you do, right? So my take on this is that this is a climate change is a big problem. It's going to take actually several centuries for us to get out of this problem. But let's start and make a good stab at it, and then just consistently to addressing the problem. And so,
that being said, maybe because we kind of dove in pretty hard and fast, if we could take a step back and explain to people what Hago Energetics does and
yes.
what you guys are doing with methane to make hydrogen, to make biochar, just so people could follow that stepping process.
Right. So overall, I mean, Hago Energetics is about decarbonizing the world. We want to ultimately bring down the carbon dioxide levels and also the methane levels in the world. And there are many approaches. The approach that we are focusing right now is to deal with methane, convert methane to hydrogen in a carbon negative way, so that the carbon from the methane goes into the soil and stays there basically for several centuries. So that in a nutshell is what we're doing with our approach. Now
I got two of those too. I get it.
The key to doing this is to employ.
Bookie's our consultant. He's on our website.
Yes. The key to doing this is to use carbon catalyst to affect the conversion of methane to hydrogen. Now, this is the unique. This is something that this is the unique feature of our technology, because this catalyst is readily available. It's a biochar basically, so that you can get from a wide variety of different sources. It can come from agricultural material, as you mentioned, for example, walnut shells. It can come from residual forest wood. It can come in from dry cow manure and a few other things. So we use this material then as an effective, basically, agent to catalyze the decomposition of methane to hydrogen and carbon. The carbon goes into the catalyst, and catalyst goes back into the soil as a soil amendment. And then the hydrogen can be used for a variety of different purposes. For example, the ammonia production. It's one of them, refineries, and there's another one. But we are focused right now on making hydrogen that is pure enough to go into fuel cell grade vehicles, for trucks. And also buses. So that's our focus.
And just so people understand, when you talk about methane, people immediately, when they think methane, like, oh no, not that. This is talking about like bio waste, agricultural waste, naturally occurring methane it exists, it's there. You're not generating it. You're taking something that's a waste product, and you're doing something useful with it by breaking out, because with methane, it's, what is it, Bernard? It's CH4, I think is what you said.
CH4. It's 4 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of carbon.
And you're breaking out those 4 hydrogens. You got your 1 atom of carbon. Your hydrogen is now going to be used for the fuel cell. Your carbon will be put in the biochar, which is then used as an agricultural product to be sequestered in the soil. I just wanted people to understand the full stepping stone of that, because it's
That's good.
Yeah.
Can we hire her? We need to hire her, Wilson. She's pretty darn good. They're wonderful.
We need effective communicators, yes. And then the thing about methane is readily available from a wide variety of sources, and there's a lot of wasted biomethane out there. I mean, I've seen quite a few of big gigantic pits where they basically have cow manure just lying there, and then meanwhile all this methane is emanating, and then you can pick these things up from a satellite. That's the source right there of hydrogen.
One of my first jobs, I was a field geologist, and I would go to landfills, and we would use a PID, which is photoionization detector, to look for how much methane was coming out to see if it was going to blow up or not. We were looking for the lower explosive limit. So this stuff is off-gassing all the time, and we're just letting it into the atmosphere when we should be grabbing it and using it.
And all the we're talking about CO2, CO2 sounds to me like an old sitcom, Marsha. But CO2 is very important, and it is a primary greenhouse gas. But methane is 80 times more reactive in the atmosphere. It's got a little less of a half-life. So in methane, it's just coming up fugitive methane from oil wells, from leaks in pipes, from landfills, from wastewater treatment. And one thing that's interesting, the climate talks in Abu Dhabi, they could not come to a conclusion and say, let's lower our use of fossil fuels. But they all said, let's jump on methane and sequester methane. So it's very important. And I want to make one point, that this simple process of just separating the methane, the hydrogen from the methane and sequestering the carbon in biochar is the least expensive way to sequester the carbon. It's got a very low CI score, maybe the lowest CI, carbon index score. So that means it's the lowest score.
Just so people understand, what does CI mean?
It's the carbon index. Go ahead, Wilson.
Yeah, it stands for carbon impact. Yeah, so basically, it's a gauge of the life cycle analysis of the product.
So it's, we have
everything inclusive.
Yes. Well, the way we do it now, and the way we've been doing it ever since we've been drilling for oil, is we separate the hydrogen from the methane gas comes up from oil wells. So as we're pumping oil wells, methane comes up. And then what we've been doing is separating the hydrogen from the methane and letting the carbon go up into the atmosphere. And then we use the hydrogen to hydrocrack long chain oil molecules into diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, kerosene, tar, bunker fuel. But we need the hydrogen for that. But we also use hydrogen in a myriad of industrial processes. So right now, what we're focused on are transportation fuels, because the state and federal governments, they support the use of hydrogen in transportation vehicles. But one thing that we want to focus on is the production of any hydrogen that doesn't spew carbon into the atmosphere should be supported also. And I think that this is where we go. And I just want to say one more thing. All of the biomethane, we can process that, but we can also, all of the methane that comes from the geologic sources, we can also separate the hydrogen from that. So this is an all-purpose player. We got a switch in here with what Wilson has developed with Hago Energetics. It's very, and the other thing I will say is it's not just methane gas, but all we can through this process of pyrolysis and anaerobic digestion, Hago is the keystone. So we can process any organic waste into hydrogen, biochar, soil, and replenish our soil and basically suck carbon out of the atmosphere with the photosynthetic process through the plants, which are the lungs and the mouth of the bacteria in the soil. And so we can draw CO2 back into the earth where it belongs. And I will quote the great Thor Bailey, carbon is either in the atmosphere, in the plant, or in the soil. And that's where it is. So we want to draw it from the atmosphere through the plant, back into the soil, into the carbon life forms, and build up those carbon life forms and build up soil, make beautiful food. And finally, have a party with some music, just like I wanted to at the very beginning of my life.
And you yourself are comfortable.
Yeah. And then I should add, Wendy, that our approach is an interesting one. It's because it combines a nature-based approach with technology. In the sense that you have, biochar is a nature-based approach, but at the same time we have the production of hydrogen that we do a pyrolysis process, and so it's a very hybrid approach.
Could you explain really briefly? So hold on, Bernard. Really briefly, Sure. Could you explain to the general public what is a biochar? How is it made, and how is it used?
Yes. So biochar basically comes from plants, and it what happens is that when you take plants and you subject them to very high temperature, the plants decompose, and then you when in the act of decomposition you get gas coming out, But the stuff, there's also a carbon that's left over, a very black form of carbon that is very porous in nature, and that is considered biochar. And you can put that into the soil, and it helps plants survive drought conditions. It helps with water retention, and it traditionally it's been around for people have known about this for basically millennia. That it can be helpful with plants. And so so in a sense it's something that people have not really thought about in terms of hydrogen production, and that's where we are in our journey.
May I elaborate on that just a moment? So a plant only gets two things from the atmosphere. It gets sunlight and it gets CO2 carbon, and it builds just like us, its skeleton with that carbon, and then it sends down sugars to the bacteria of the soil, and it says, hey, I need this some nitrate soil, and then there are 5,000 bacteria that the plant sends exudates, a little order form down. It says, in fact, I'll trade you this cup of sugar if you give me these nutrients. So it's this beautiful system, symbiotic system. And so that's what a plant is. And so then when we chop it up and put it into a pyrolysis unit, we basically vaporize or gasify out all the life juice out of that. And then there are these little tiny pores. And 1 teaspoon of biochar, those pores can, if you spread all the surface area out, would be a football-sized field of surface area. So then that's how the carbon from the methane process and separating the hydrogen goes into those pores. And then we inoculate it also with nutrients, and then we put it in the soil. So it's a full circle system that literally, again, it's rapid photosynthetic process to, again, do what Thor suggests we do, is pull that carbon out of the atmosphere and back to Earth where it belongs.
And thank you for saying you do need to add those nutrients in, because it is so porous that it can hold on to the nutrients and then release it out as needed. But also coming from my environmental insurance background, there are people now using biochar in remediation.
Yes,
so because it's so porous, it can absorb that pollutant, and it does create a waste, yes, which is then treated. But it is a great way to have this full circular economy of making something, using it again, recycling again, repurposing again, until it just cannot be used anymore. And that's just over and over and over again. Instead of, back in the day, we would just put down absorbent booms or something that we made it worse, and then threw it away.
Yes. We put it somewhere else. So the solution to pollution is dilution. But we can't keep doing that. And it's important, yes, as you say, biochar is an important component in activated carbon. And that's, Black and Beach right now is developed processes, Patel, to basically absorb PFOAs and PFOSs and all those Ps and all of those, exactly what you're talking about. And then they burn it off in a pyrolysis unit. So, and these are all integrated processes, but getting back to this very simple thing is that Wilson's way of just separating that hydrogen from the methane and sequestering the carbon, attracting the carbon, the atomic carbon into that biochar. And then with the dairies, we just inoculated with the dairy juice, after anaerobic. It's a beautiful circular system. And I'm just learning how to talk about it. Wilson actually invented it, and it is. I believe this is for all those investors out there. This is the best way to sequester the carbon, making hydrogen, and it is simple, and it is profitable, and it can scale wherever there's methane. This is where this technology is relevant and important for mitigating climate change. And one more thing, as I'm thinking about that old song, 16 tons, if the right one don't get you, then the one fist of iron and one of steel, the right one won't get you, then the left one will. Yes, climate change is important, but right there is, we are facing now peak oil, peak methane. We have drilled so many holes in this earth. We have drilled more holes in the earth in the United States. We're harvesting more natural gas and methane than ever before, but they're running out quickly. So if climate change doesn't get us basically the end of cheap, easy oil and gas will. And so this, I don't care which side of the aisle you're on, we need to start dealing with our waste and making fuels and agricultural products and stop pumping, putting nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium in the soil. We need to get back to a nature-based process, is what Wilson is saying. Without using nature's magic, we can't even understand how these processes work. But we need to piggyback on and jump on the nature train and do the work and clean up this planet for many different reasons.
Hey, Wendy, you mentioned just throwing things away. It's okay to throw things away, put carbon, as long as you put it there and stays there. And so if it's okay to kind of get the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, take out the carbon and somehow put it back into the soil. And so if you can do that.
As long as there's a process afterwards. I'm not sure that was happening back then. I don't think people were cognizant or aware. But I wanted to touch on what Bernard had said, which I think is very important, Wilson, with my next question I'll have for you. We have surging energy demands. If people don't realize, when we type something into Google, it uses energy. When we type something into AI, it uses about 20 times more energy. And people don't know cryptocurrency. It's a huge amount of energy being used, and we're getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And yes, people say drill, drill, drill. That is a finite resource. So we need to actually have something that can constantly be regenerating. And you had mentioned dairy, which reminded me, you guys are working with local ranches, and these local ranches produce waste, lots of it. And Wilson, could you talk about maybe some of this symbiotic relationship that you have with ranches or waste facilities to take that methane, turn it into something good?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a problem. I mean, in terms of this waste, if you drive along I-5, you kind of smell kind of the waste that's
it's interesting. Yes.
It's called dairy perfume. That's the hydrogen sulfide and the sulfur. Old dairy perfume. I love the smell of dairy perfume in the morning.
Barting has all the dictums, but anyway, So our approach is basically There are different ways that you can use this manure, right? One of them is if it's wet enough, then you can go basically collect the biogas that's generated as the manure decomposes. That's biogas, which is a mixture of carbon dioxide and methane. You pull out the carbon dioxide and then you just use the methane. The carbon dioxide can be repurposed for a variety of different things, or it can be sequestered in the ground. The methane then can be used to make the hydrogen, which can be used to power the in-house needs of the farm. For example, just like if the farm, there are certain farms that have 50, 100 dray trucks that they use on the operations. It can be a very circular approach in that way. The biochar that we in our process, we can actually get it from dry cow manure, because that can be a source of if you pyrolyze that material, can be the biochar, and then that can go into the soil. After you pyrolyze it, can go into the soil, where it can be the farm can sell the product, the biochar, to other farms. So it's a very circular approach. And then when the approach is applied to wastewater treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants produce a waste product called biosolid. So it's basically like solid, the shit that comes out at the very end, human stuff. That stuff can also be served as a source of biochar for our process. So you can then, and wastewater treatment plants also produce biogas. So you have the biogas in combination with the biochar, all from the wastewater treatment plant, and then to produce the hydrogen that they can use for their trucks, or they can also sell. So it's another implementation or approach that we see as going forward. And we're working on projects with a wastewater treatment plant here in Southern California.
Yes.
And also the profitability of using that, processed waste that they can actually sell back up. That just adds benefit to anyone who wants to work with you, because they're making a profit off of something they used to just throw away or let rot.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. I have a funny thing about it. I worked with dairies for quite a while, and those are confined animal feeding operations, CAFOs, CAFO. What's a CPFO? It's a confined people feeding operation, also known as a city. And they do the same thing. They concentrate nutrition from far and wide, and then they concentrate it and feed it, and then you have all this waste. We have a tremendous problem of waste that's built up in California. And it's an interesting thing. When Thor Bailey, who's been doing this 40 years, and a bunch of old timers that he's introduced me to, they used to use biomass waste, agricultural waste, to make, burn it, incinerate it to make energy. Now we've been using natural gas for so long just because it was cheap and easy. So we have an overburden in the forests with the forest fires, as you know, as an insurance mitigation expert, and also the waste in agriculture. We're up to our ears in waste, and no one knows what to do with it. And guess what, Wendy? We know what to do with it.
Of course you do. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I mean, ultimately, we're starting with waste, but ultimately we want to hit the big mother load, which is basically natural gas. Right.
Yes.
We have a humongous amounts of reserves in the United States and in the world of natural gas. That natural gas should not be burned, because then you're sending a carbon back into the atmosphere. So our thinking on this is that we should convert that to hydrogen and just bury that carbon in the soil forever. And that makes sense. Ultimately is kind of what we would like to do in this sector.
And it also keeps the jobs open for people in those industries. I always tell people we're never really going to get rid of petroleum. We just aren't. Too many things are made out of it. I mean, our phones, our computers, that's fine. Just stop burning it. That is all I ask of people. Stop burning it. Now, oh, go ahead, Bernard.
No. I'm having fun. I'm realizing how fun this all is. This whole, if we do the right things, it can actually feed our hearts and souls and provide lots of laughs, because it's really, when we're doing something that makes sense and is easy, it really does, I think, make us happy. As opposed, I think we all know there's a dread, a certain fear that we're holding inside of us, knowing that we're moving closer and closer toward the edge, just like an addict. I call us addicts. Only we're shooting up oil into our eco's bloodstream, and we need to break that habit and do healthier things, just acquire more healthy habits. And so Wilson and his technology can help us do that.
And also talking more about it. I mean, I was talking to a girlfriend today of, all the new technologies that are out there, all the new ideas. I told her about you guys that I was talking to you today. And I said, but the media just likes to focus on the negative. And the sole purpose of what I do and what you guys do is we focus on the positive, what can change, what can be done. And to think of things differently and do things differently will have that effect that we need.
There's one point now, which I'm not going to enter into the political landscape, though there are folks who have supported this kind of technology. We had zero emission standards in California. I had a hydrogen fuel cell integration startup in 2000 with the head of NASA's fuel cell program and a Bechtel engineer, and a hanging chad in Florida basically killed the electric car and killed the hydrogen fuel cell. But I will say this, we can, for us, we want to support these changing technologies and the great, if you ever get a chance to watch Nate Hagen's The Great Simplification, it'll open your eyes to the fact that we are energy blind. We don't understand the importance of energy and the environment and losing species and all of these things. But here I go, Wilson. I'm just losing my little point. The important thing in all of this is to recognize that we are producing more fossil fuels in the United States than ever before. We keep hearing drill baby drill, and we're going to become the energy dominant producer in the world. We already are. We are producing more oil and gas now than ever in the history of mankind and in the United States. So there's a fantasy that somehow we've shut down oil production here. No, we're making more of that stuff than ever before. We're not trying to take anything away. We want to add new tools so that we can move forward and prosper.
No, I agree. And so, Wilson, who are you looking to connect with? Who would you like to find you, work with you, hire you? What does that look like?
We're always looking for additional farmers that are interested in our technology that can use projects, host projects, basically, because we put our facilities right next to their operations.
Nice.
So it'd be great to connect with that. We also work with wastewater treatment plants. Anybody who's interested in that sector. Also, landfills. Landfills who like say some landfills who may be flaring their biogas. We can just take that biogas and convert it to hydrogen. And of course, the last one is just natural gas operations. If there's a natural gas operation that basically they're not monetizing their natural gas for some reason, we'd love to go work with them and convert that wasted energy to hydrogen.
Absolutely brilliant. And you just named a whole bunch of industries that are not using this methane, that is just naturally occurring or naturally being created from waste. And rather than let it go up into the atmosphere and cause a whole bunch of damage, it's being turned into renewable energy that we all desperately need.
Yes. And I would say we'll work with anyone who wants to make a profit. Because ultimately, as my old mentor, Werner O. Harris, PE, used to say, you can do all the good in the world, but it has to have a bottom line and a profit. And we now have a profitable way to sequester carbon and CO2 and separate and make hydrogen for a number of uses. But there are folks who are making plenty of hydrogen now, but in the old way where they just spew CO2 in the atmosphere. So I think we have the best way and the best and most profitable way to make carbon negative hydrogen and to basically suck CO2 out of the atmosphere with the photosynthetic process with a simple little machine called a plant.
And the current method of making hydrogen right now is steam methane reforming, and that has a huge carbon footprint exceeding 10 times the amount, let's say 10 kilos of CO2 per kilo of hydrogen. That happens to be also the cheapest way of making hydrogen at the moment. So for any other approach to come in, they have to compete with that ultimately. And then so that's not going to happen until the cost for that hydrogen production goes up because of carbon prices. But it will happen. That's the way.
That's with any technology. When it first starts off, it's going to be more expensive. But as it gets scaled up and there are more and more and more of it, if you look at electric batteries, lithium ion even, it was very expensive. Solar panels used to be very expensive, and now they've gotten more economical. They work better than they ever did. So it's time for the technology to continue to work and be refined. It's really that simple.
Right. And by the way, people have this whole argument that it's going to be hydrogen. Oh, it's going to be batteries and all of that. Now yes, it's both. And we have two of the best people in the world with Rex Hodge and Glenn Ramback. And they will advise us, and Wilson knows that a hydrogen fuel cell system needs a battery. And this is where we can use mix and match and create hybrids, just like I drive a hybrid Prius. And it's a wonderful, wonderful vehicle. Well, we could just pull that. What if we just pulled that gasoline engine out of there and put a hydrogen fuel cell in? And that essentially are all the energy systems being formed. So we don't have to fight about this. What we have to do is integrate and use the best technology for the highest and best use. And talking about jobs, we're going to have all kinds of jobs for smart people that can maximize these technologies, these raw-based technologies into the mode of transportation, heat, that won't be putting so much carbon in the atmosphere. And that's what I'm personally excited about, and why I'm so happy to have hitched my wagon to this rising star of technology. And I will say this too, everyone on our team, they've been in this for a while and their hearts are in the right place, and we're working toward this. So thank you. You are just, you're one of the team. And now I feel like
I try, and I'm grateful for introducing all of this, because I honestly think that the technology you guys have is necessary and important, and the fact that it is a full circular economy that you're working, circularity that you're working on. This is something.
And nature system.
Yeah, it's something people desperately need. So on that, Wilson and Bernard, thank you guys so much for your time today. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's very important. I highly recommend you guys check out Hago Energetics. Go to LinkedIn. You can find both Wilson and Bernard on LinkedIn, or go to their website. Real quick, what is the exact, I don't want to mess it up, your exact website?
It's HagoEnergetics.com.
But you can also find it. We've acquired the URL HagoHydrogen.com. So if that's easier to remember, we now have that links to our system, and in the future we'll be integrating that also into it. But HagoHydrogen.com, if it's easier. Hago Energetics reminds me of, I got to do some exercise or something. Jack LaLanne, and I'm too lazy to do that. No,
Who doesn't
yes.
love Jack LaLanne, though?
So Hago Hydrogen will also get you there.
Love it. And I like that, kind of flows very nicely. Hago Hydrogen, HH. It really, that flows nicely. That's a good job that you secured that one. So thank you both. Your time here has been extremely valuable and knowledgeable, and I'm grateful for everything that you guys do.
Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate your time.
Anytime, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a great time. I'm Wendy Nystrom, your host with Environmental Social Justice. Please check out Hago Energetics or Hago Hydrogen, and check out this system. It's a really cool stuff that they're doing. You guys take care.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. All right.